Raising unicorns.
Harmon Brothers.
I think it's easy when you have a budget or like when someone's like, we want you to go big. It's easy to fall into that trap of like, okay, let's go big.
It's time for part 2.
Part 2.
I think the real challenging part is to go big in the right ways
100%.
and make it memorable with whatever you're going big with that's connected to the product. Because otherwise it's like, it's just, did you see this ad? They did this thing where they launched a guy in a rocket. Oh, what was the ad for? Oh, suck. Crap, I can't remember. But it was freaking wild, man. Like they must have spent a ton of money, you know?
Yeah. And like I think when we hear big budget, we immediately think, well, like movies, big budget movies have lots of spectacle, but it isn't apples to apples with ads. And honestly, with movies, that's my same advice.
But it's the same thing. It's like Michael Bay does some insane, unbelievable Bayham action that's just like, whoa. But you're like, it doesn't have any emotional weight. Almost ever. I mean, they're giant space robots.
I call it boring action. Yeah, when you can watch it and just be like, when is this going to stop? And me, like with having a production background, fully appreciating that like every minute of this movie is costing $2 million.
So much money. So much money.
And see, please. But I would say, like, even with Avatar, I think the first Avatar could have been the greatest movie of all time. If the budget is $300 million, why not throw more at the writing?
Yeah.
Can we shave off 4 minutes of CGI and give that to some writers so that this amazing spectacle also has weight? But I think it's the same thing for ads. And it definitely please let's portion out more of that budget, be it big or small, towards the writing first. And then make it look great. It's that idea of like in editing, there's that quote of like, editing can make a good thing great, but it can't make a bad thing great.
Yeah.
Like you can only go one more level.
Yeah.
And writing is the way to get it to that place.
Yep.
Because you can tinker all you want after that with however much, After Effects.
But it doesn't make a crappy joke funnier.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people who listen to our podcasts are usually like they might be small business owners or entrepreneurs or like people who are at startups who like might not have crazy big budgets, for maybe or even modest budgets. And so some of the stuff they're just like they're writing small, simple videos. They're doing TikTok style videos, and even in TikTok style videos, like writing is still key. Like writing is really, really important to like having good content because people still will filter out crap content. If it's not entertaining, it's not funny. Like on the smaller scale, like what advice would you give for a company who wants to maybe start doing more comedic stuff or might want to start venturing into like actually doing some advertising that has some personality behind it? From a writing perspective, what advice would you give them?
I would say obviously like go comedic, focus on the writing. And honestly, like hire comedians before you hire comic writers or before you try and like teach ad writers to be funny or invest in courses for them to be funny. Haven't you found that it's a lot easier to take someone that already has a skill set and just sort of inform them with what their new parameters are?
100%. And I think too, you were obviously a really clear example of that where you're like, oh, I just need to understand the rules of the game and I can play within those constraints and get this really quick. And like Kurt Maloney's another one like that. And you've worked with Kurt on Tuttle Twins, right?
Great.
And like he's another, he does stand up, but most of his background is in improv. And I think that's improv. It's the same way where it's like, what's the rules of the game? What's the bit that we're doing? And then you just figure out how to work within those constraints. Yeah. And I think if they have that core comedy component where they know how to make things punchy and funny and they know like the rules of the game, it's so much easier to do that. Because I think that when you try and get a marketer to be funny, it's painful.
It doesn't have to be exclusively comedians.
Sure.
But I think one way that it helps if you're going to hire someone is that comedians will already have sort of you can see their stuff online. Yeah. And I also don't want to say not even 100% of comedians. Like some comedians are like mostly personality, zero jokes, Kevin Hart. So I wouldn't just hire anyone because there still has to be like, especially people who have that skill set of like setup punch, like cleanly crafted jokes, or someone who is great at improv, who is very quick on their feet because they can also sit down and write jokes as well. And from that background, that actually helps too, because there is a performative aspect to ad writing when you are pitching an ad that is crucial to it. Because I don't know how many ads I've been in, especially in the beginning, I wasn't great at performing on my own scripts. And then I would complain about like, his isn't funny, or he just talked funnier. And it's like, yeah, that's what the ad is going to be.
Yeah. One clients are bad at seeing through that.
100%.
Because I've been present for a lot of those with you, Kellen, because Kellen is almost on all of my big projects. Like if he's possibly available, I'm like, will you write? And it's so true, because they can't see, they see the spectacle, they see the energy, they feel the room, like of what's being displayed to them. And if it's not, even if you have the best jokes, if it's not like with that energy and being pitched to them in a really powerful way, they're like, oh, that one was funny, but like I remember the feeling I had when this guy was reading, and it was like big and like fun, and like, you know, felt exciting, you know.
Yeah, I've had that and been bitter in the moment of like someone else who I thought that their script was weaker, but they could do voices, and I can't really do voices.
Now, Kellen, that's not true. I've been listening to the animatic that you're doing for Tuttle Twins. And you've done a bunch of the voices on there.
Well, yeah, that was a bummer too, because one of the characters is supposed to be Robin Williams from Jumanji, but it's almost like I can do a Robin Williams if you know that I'm doing Robin Williams.
But it's not good enough to where it crosses over that threshold.
Immediately. Yeah. That's like bad. That's what bad impressionists do. They have to say, here's Christopher Walken at McDonald's. Yeah. Which I'm not going to do, because everyone has a Christopher Walken. But if you have to say it, you're not good.
I thought you nailed it.
I have to. I have to with Robin Williams. So then when I say, what was it? My favorite line is like, define filmmaking. Like,
hey, that's pretty good. That was actually pretty good.
What year is it? So those little things. But if you don't know that, someone threw in the feedback who had no idea what the character was supposed to be. She goes, why does this guy sound like Mr. Burns? And then now that's all I could hear. Hey, Smithers.
What year is it, Smithers?
But I would say now that like an objective standpoint is that solid writing and solid performance are both crucial to that environment, because you have to be able to, like, performance also instills like confidence in the client.
Yeah. I remember you were telling me about your bike lock joke and how you had been workshopping that, and maybe tell them a little bit about like the audience a little bit about like what was the thing that put it over the edge. Do you remember this?
So the joke just started as an idea. I was in a Home Depot and I saw that they were just, they just sell, Home Depot essentially sells weapons. So I was just imagining like how insane is it like at this store, I don't know about here in Utah, but like regular store, if there are guns or whatever dangerous things, they're locked up behind the thing. But you go to Home Depot and it's just like saws and axes and hammers and all manner of, like, you could just, your imagination goes crazy, right? Am I the only one? No. So then I just walking by the chains and realizing like I could just buy a chain. So the original joke was you could go to Home Depot and buy a chain and a padlock and put it on anything you want. And that was the joke. And it never really hit. But I kept iterating. And once it went from padlock and chain and whatever you want on writing, and Made to Stick are the two books that have influenced my comedy writing more than anything. And Made to Stick, though, which I highly, highly recommend.
Such a good book.
And it's all about like making memorable messages. And they're like, the more concrete you can be, the more emotional you can be. And so sort of using those tactics, like just making it more specific. So I took it from padlock and chain to just bike lock, which is very snappy and very specific. And then I said, you could just grab, so then it became a bike lock. Isn't it crazy that bike locks are illegal? With the line that everyone remembers is, do you have any idea the amount of power you wield with your imagination in a bike lock? And then the example became like, you could just go up to a Baskin Robbins and be like, you're closed. And I just have this little, it's not even like a sharp joke, but just the idea of snapping this lock onto the two door handles of a Baskin Robbins. And then that's like literally yesterday I was at Zupa's and I ordered, and the guy goes, are you a comedian? The guy making my salad, he's like, you talk about bike locks, right? And I was like, other stuff too.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I remember you saying that gesture was one of the things that put it over the top, right? Like just kind of, it was like the end cap that just kind of brought everything together.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, that's like the stuff that I think only comes when you practice and workshop. because it's so funny. Like humans our brains work so interesting because it's like the slightest change in performance can be the make or break. And the concept can be so rich and can be so funny and punchy. But if it's just off on the timing, even the slightest bit or a gesture or like an inflection point is missed, the joke just falls flat.
To that point, before it was your close, the iteration before that was, I would then just say, you could go up to a Baskin Robbins and lock it. And even that, people were just like, huh, you could. So like
that's a great point.
The joke, even though everything building into it was still 99% the same, it was just that one little "you're closed" and boom, becomes the biggest joke I've ever done.
Yeah, that's wild. But it just speaks to the testament of workshopping and polishing. So thanks so much, Kellen, for coming on here. This has been super fun. I always love talking about creativity, and I've always enjoyed working with you just as a writer. And like I feel like we've always gelled super, super well. And I think a lot of our products have actually turned out like really well whenever we work together. So it's always fun to work together in another capacity. Don't forget to check out Kellen's podcast, The Book Pile. Kellen co-hosts the podcast with one of our other writers, Dave Vance. And again, the Transformer episode is pure comic gold. You should check it out. Any other really good episodes that you really love?
Some recent ones that we did that I'm really proud of is that we roasted Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Which we didn't mean to. I just never read it. And I was like, this is insane that it was so successful. We've roasted the Twilight series. We've recently done Ender's Game. And we've done two episodes with my favorite comedian in the world, Chad Daniels. We've done The Old Man of the Sea. And we spent 40 minutes just on Goodnight Moon. Those are both very fun.
All right, man. Until next time, thanks for joining us on this episode. Thanks, man.
All right.
Thank you for watching Raising Unicorns!
Subscribe now.